Daf Tzadi Tesamid Beis, the Mishnah at the top of the Amud. Zok the Mishnah, Koilet Yomi Masechet Lemata miyut tvachim. A person, if he's standing in the Rishus Rabim, can hold up a kli and collect the water, catch the water from a gutter. He can catch it from the gutter, and even though the gutter is lower than 10 tvachim, so even though it's in the airspace of the Rishus Rabim, he is allowed to catch this water. But from a tziner, from a drain pipe, he can drink it in any manner, meaning even he can drink it directly, not only catching it from midair, he can even put his mouth to it and drink it directly. So we'll see in the Gemara what the chilik is between a maschila and a tziner and what the issue is over here. So Zok the Gemara, Koiled in Avol Mitzaref Loy. When it says that he can collect the water, it doesn't mean that he is allowed to actually put the keli to the gutter. He only can catch it in midair. It means that he's koiled, he catches it in midair, but not mitzaref. But he can't put the kli next to the gutter and collect it directly from the gutter. My timer, what's the reason? Amar of Nachman, Hachva Maschila, Pachos Migimel Samach Legagaskina. We're talking about a gutter that's within 3 of the roof, and the whole Pachos Migimel Samach Legag Kagag Dami. Anything that is within 3 of the gag, within 3 tefachim of the gag, so we would say Dovid, and it's considered taking from the gag. So therefore the pshat is like this. If he is now puts the kli right up to the gutter. So what is the gutter? A gutter is, they had a flat roof, the water would drain from the roof, it would come to a gutter, and which would be extended away from the wall so that the water doesn't fall on the side of the wall, it doesn't ruin the wall, it drains away. So it was removed somewhat from the roof. Now, if it was the maschila, typically a maschila would be within 3 tefachim of the roof. We have a principle of Dovid, and if it's within 3 tefachim of the roof, if it doesn't extend beyond that, it's considered like it's part of the roof. Therefore, even if it's below 10 tefachim, even if it's below the airspace of Rishus Yachid, but the roof is a Rishus Yachid, if you take it directly from the gutter, it's considered taking it from the roof. Therefore, if he's in the Rishus Rabim and he takes it directly from the gutter, it's like he's taking from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabim. So it's like he's being mitzi, and therefore it's awesome. If he catches it in midair, therefore it's not considered to be part of the roof, it's in midair. And therefore, if he's collecting it in midair, he's collecting it from the airspace of the Rishus Rabim, he's not transferring from the Rishus Yachid. But if he would be collecting it directly from the maschila, directly from the gutter, then he's taking it from the Rishus Hayachid. Now, if we have that's the case where we have by maschila, but at tziner mikol makam shaisa. The Mishnah says from a tziner you can drink it mikol makam shaisa. You can drink it directly. Why can you drink it directly? Because Rashi explains that at tziner, what's the difference between a tziner and maschila? A tziner is a drain pipe. So typically, a tziner would be something which is a longer pipe, which drains away from the roof, and it's a pipe that typically leads out to the Rishus Rabim, and the water falls into the street, into the Rishus Rabim. So, minastam, the tzinar is more than 3 tefachim away from the roof. So, minastam, the tzinar is not part of the roof, and therefore, minatzinar mikol makam shaisa, you can drink directly from the tzinar, because the tzinar is not considered to be a Rishus Hayachid, because it's drawn away from the roof. So that's a basic chilik between the two, and therefore, being koiled adam in a maschila, if you're koiled from the maschila, then you're collecting it from the air, it's mutter. But if you're being mitzaref, then you can't do it, because mitzaref, if it's directly, then you're considered to be taking it from the roof. So basically, there's no difference between a tziner and a maschila. In the halacha, there's no difference except the metzias. The metzias is different. The tziner min hastam is more than 3 tvachim away, so it's not part of the roof, and therefore you can do it directly. What is the definition of mitzaref? You can be koilet from midair, but not be mitzaref. There's a machlokes rishonim. The Rashba on the Torah says that when we say that you're of a mitzaref loy, you can't be mitzaref, means that it means drinking directly. It means drinking directly from it. But even if it's within 3 tvachim of the maschila, it would be mutter because it's still considered mid-air. But Rabbeinu Yonasan and the Miri say that no, that even within 3 tvachim of the opening of the maschila is still considered direct. So within 3 tvachim we consider direct, and that also be also to be in mid-air. It has to be more than 3 tvachim. It has to be more than 3 tvachim away. Tanya Namahaki, we have a raya to this that within 3 tvachim, anything within 3 tvachim of the gag of the roof is considered part of the roof. We learn in the brisa, a person can stand on Rishus Yachid and raise his hand above 10 tvachim, above the ground. He can do it to a place which is within 3 tvachim of his neighbor's gag, and he can collect the water as it's falling. He can collect it from midair. But he cannot collect it directly, because if he collects it directly, then he's taking from his neighbor, which is Rishus Yachid, to his Rishus Yachid, to his Rishus, and without an Eruv. So it's from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Yachid without an Eruv, and therefore would be also, if it's flying through the air, he's not taking it from the Rishus Yachid. But if it's within 3, then it's considered taking it from his neighbor. So you see that within 3 of the gag is considered part of the gag. Taisus points out that this is not going like Rav Shimon, because according to Rav Shimon, he says that different roofs are considered one rishus. You don't need an Eruv. But over here, we're going not like Rav Shimon. A person does not stand on a Rishus Yachid, for instance, like the case before, on his roof. And raise his hands more than 10 tefachim from the ground, within 3 of his neighbor's roof, and collect the water and collect it, press his hand against the wall and collect it, about koilet who is shaisa, but he can catch it midair and drink it. So the Mishnah continues, from atzinar, from a drain pipe, you can even do it directly, drink it directly from the drain pipe, because as we said, the drain pipe is typically more than 3 tvachim away from the roof, so it's not considered that he's taking it from the roof. Tana im yesh b'tzinar dalet al dalet also. If the tziner is dalet al dalet, it's also mipnei shukemaitzim rishus l'shus, because then he's taking it from rishus. If the tziner is dalet al dalet, even though it's below 10, so we talked in the Mishnah that the case was that it was within 10 of the ground. But if it has dalet al dalet, the opening of the tziner is dalet al dalet, it's a karmelis. You can't take from a karmelis to the rishus harabim, so it would be awesome. If it doesn't have dalet al dalet, so therefore it's not considered a karmelis, it's considered a malkam patur, and it's not considered part of the roof because it's more than 3 away from the roof, so then it's mutter. Now, therefore, we're learning over here that the case in the Mishnah, that's why the Mishnah said the case is talking that it's within 10 of the ground, rather. Because if it's higher than 10 of the ground, then it would be also regardless, because you can't take directly from the tzinar, because either if it's dalet al dalet, it's a rishus yachid, and it's a rishus yachid, a rishus harabim. And even if it's not dalet al dalet, but since if it's 10 or more high, if it would be dalet, it's a rishus yachid. There's an issur deraisa, we would not allow it, even if it's less than dalet al dalet. But if it's below 10, where it's not a rishus yachid, so if it's dalet, it's a karmelis, it's awesome. But we're not geyser if it's less than 10. So therefore, if the drain pipe is within 10 of the ground, and it's not dalet al dalet, you can drink directly from the drain pipe because it's more than 3 away from the gag. It's not part of the Rishus HaYachid. It's not a karmelis, and it's mutter. Continue on, Zok the Mishnah. Bor b'shus harabim. If you have a bore that has water, b'shus harabim, v'chol yolsa gavayu tvachim, and the bank of it is 10 tvachim high. Chaloin shal gabav memalim himir b'Shabbos. If a person has a Rishus HaYachid, let's say he has a house, and there's a window over the bore, he can draw water from the bore on Shabbos through the window. So we'll discuss in the Gemara what the significance is of the Chulya Gavoya. The Gemara will discuss. Ashba b'Rishus HaRabim. Similarly, if you have a garbage dump that's in Rishus HaRabim, Gavoya Yud Tvachim, it's Gavoya Yud. So therefore, the garbage ashba itself is now Rishus HaYachid because it is 10 high and it's Daled al Daled. If you have a window above it, you can throw the water into the ashba on Shabbos because the chaloin you're pouring from Rishus HaYachid and the ashba is similarly Rishus HaYachid. So it's from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaYachid. So the more we'll analyze. And what's the case over here? You have the chaloin, it's over the bore. If we're saying that it's very close, it's very close to the window, meaning that there's less than dalet tvachim between them, meaning therefore the area between the bore and the window, that area of ground between them is now less than dalet, so it's malkum patur, and therefore you're drawing the water from the bore, which is Rishus HaYachid, over the airspace of a malkum patur into the Rishus HaYachid. So if that's the case, why do I need that the chulya is 10 high, even if it's not 10 high? But if the area over there is less than daled, so it's a malkum patur. Even if it's less than yud, it's still a malkum patur. So what's the requirement that the chulya be 10 high? You're still passing over the airspace of a malkum patur. We're talking where now it's drawn away from the kaisel, meaning that area is not a malkum patur. So that land area is a rishus, and that area is a rishus harabim. So therefore we say the reason why it's mutter is because the chulya is 10 high. What's the pshat? Because in order to draw the water, you'll have to raise it over the chulya, over the bank, and therefore it'll be raised over the 10 tefachim from the ground, and you'll be passing it over the airspace of a malkum patur, not the rishus harabim. So therefore, v'taimad chulya asor. And that's why you'll be able to now draw the water, because you won't be over the airspace of the Rishus HaRabim. But if not for that, but if not, that'll be also, because even though the bore itself is a Rishus HaYachid, because we're assuming that it's 10 deep, it's Dalet al Dalet, the bore is a Rishus HaYachid. The house that you're drawing it through the windows are Rishus HaYachid, but to draw it over the space of the Rishus HaRabim, if it's below 10, would be also, because you're passing it over the Rishus of the airspace of the Rishus HaRabim. It's considered like, therefore, you're passing it into the Rishus HaRabim and drawing it from the Rishus HaRabim to the Rishus HaYachid, which is also. Now, even though we had a machlokes in Masechet Shabbos and previously in the Masechta by Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan by Klut Kamisha Hundcha, but we're going over here according to the Mahalach that the machlokes of Klut Kamisha Hundcha is only Lamala Mesar, where it's above 10. But if it's within 10 Tvachim of the ground, even the Rabbanan who do not hold of Klut Kamisha Hundcha, that we consider something traveling through the air as though it's in that Rishos, nevertheless, if it's within 10 of the ground, we do consider it as part of the Rishos. So therefore, the requirement of the chulya is to ensure that the bucket is raised above 10 more than 10 from the ground, and therefore it's not in the Rishus HaRabim. Rav Yochanan Omer says a different shot. I feel a time of a smocha. I can even say it's besmocha. Why do you need the chulya? What is a pshat hakamashma and the bor v'chulyosim etztarfen lasara? It doesn't mean that the bank itself is 10. It means is that with the combination of the depth of the bore and the height of the bank, the height of the chulya, then you have a total of 10. If you combine it together, the depth of the bore and the rim of the bore, you have 10 from the base of the bore to the top of the chulya. That makes it into Rishus HaYachid. So therefore, the point over here is that not that the bank itself is 10. So therefore, it's besmucha. The strip, the area between the wall and between the bore is a malkam patur. But the reason you need the chulya is to make the bore into Rishus HaYachid so that you can draw it from the bore through the house. Ashba b'Rishus HaRabim. Then the Mishnah continued on in the case of the ashba of the garbage dump. The Gemara says, the more effective Gemara, are we not concerned that the ashba will be now, height will be reduced? Maybe people will remove it and clear it away, and the height, it will be reduced. Even if it was 10 high, how can you continue to pour things there? And how can you to pour things onto it? You're assuming that it's still 10 high and it's a Rishus HaYachid, and you're pouring it from the Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaYachid. Why? We're asked, aren't we concerned you're going to remove the garbage, will removed, and the height will be diminished? There was a mice with a certain mavai. Should see the one end of it was ended in the yam, in the sea, and the other end to the ashba. So therefore, it was closed on both of those ends. It had the walls, it had the mavai, but one end it was open to the sea, but the sea itself is considered to be mechitza because it has a steep bank, and the depth of the bank is more than 10, it's mechitza, and on the other end, it had an ashba, a garbage dump, which was 10 high, so therefore it was closed on both ends. Uba mice lived near Rebbe, and the mice came before Rebbe, and whether he was allowed to carry in this movie or not, and he didn't say an Isser and Heter. Why not? Heter lo yomer, but he didn't say it was mutter to carry there because we're afraid maybe they'll remove some of the garbage, and therefore the height will be diminished, and you will no longer have a mechitza. And similarly, on the other side, by the sea, he was also concerned. He was concerned that maybe there would be sediments and sand and sediments on the towards the edge of the bank, and therefore it will now raise the bottom, the depth of the bottom. The bank will no longer have a depth of 10, and therefore you will not have a mechitza on that side either. So it won't be steep enough and deep enough to have the halacha of a wall. Right? Instead of having a steep wall, it'll be a gradual slope until it gets to the depth of 10. So therefore, even though currently it has mechitzas, but there's a chashash, so he didn't want to be matri. Yisrael Yamar boy, but he didn't say categorically that it's also because of the kind of mechitzas. Because in the interim, there are mechitzas. So over here also, let us be concerned that the ashba, even though right now it has the din of a Rishus HaYachid, it has the requirements of a Rishus HaYachid, maybe some of the ashba will be removed and it will be no longer 10 high. Versus Likash, it's not a kasha. The case of Rebbe was owned by a Yachid. So maybe he wouldn't realize that the ashba would be diminished. The Rabbim, but in the case of our Mishnah, it's the Rabbim. It's owned by many people. And therefore, if it's owned by many people, it's less likely that they'll remove the ashba. In the case of a Yachid, the case of Rebbe was the case of a Yachid. And therefore, some of the garbage might have been removed, and he would not realize that now the depth is less than, the height rather is less than 10. It's not a Rishus HaYachid, but the Rabbim, it's not likely that the garbage will be removed. It's a public garbage dump or semi-public garbage dump, and it will remain that way. So therefore, in this case of the Mishnah, we're not concerned. Continue on, Zok the Mishnah, Yomi Masechet Eruvin, a tree that had a covering, formed a covering over the ground. You had a tree, and it had large branches, so it was like an umbrella. The branches extended out, they were up, and the branches extended out, so you had underneath it, you're underneath those branches, it's as if you're under a canopy or under an umbrella. So if you have that scenario, now to be able to carry underneath it, so you have to have the dimensions of a Rishus HaYachid. It has to be treated like a Rishus HaYachid. To be treated as a Rishus HaYachid, it has to have mechitzas. So the area is Dalet al Dalet, and to be Rishus HaYachid, it has to be surrounded by mechitzas. You have the branches come up and come down. So it's naturally formed as mechitzas. As long as the branches come down to the ground, you have mechitzas. But if they're above the ground, then you have suspended mechitzas, which are not mutter. Mechitza tlu is mutter b'mayim, but not otherwise not. Now, if it's within 3 of the ground, you'd say lovud, and it's considered like it's extended to the ground, and it reaches the ground, and therefore would be a valid mechitza. If not, it's not a valid mechitza. Another halacha legabe the tree sharoshev gvoim min haaretz gimel tefachim, if the roots they are now extend up and they're 3 tefachim or more from the ground, lo yeshiv aleim, you can't sit on them. Because if it's more than 3 tefachim on the ground, it's not it's part of the ground. It's considered therefore as a tree. And you're not allowed to use a tree on Shabbos. You're not allowed to mishtamish be'ilan. It's a gzera d'Rabbanan, and you might cut it down. You might cut some of the branches. So therefore, if it's within 3 tefachim of the ground, it's considered part of the ground. It's like sitting on the ground. If it's higher than that, you can't, because it's like using the tree, which is part of the gzera, l'ishtamish be'ilan. Even if you planted the tree and you planted it for shade, you can't carry underneath it if it's more than Beis Hasayim, if it's more than 5,000 square amas. Nighttime, and what's the reason? Well, if it has mechitzas and you planted it to use the area underneath it, well, we know that if you have a large area, as long as it has mechitzas, which were hukaf ladira, which were put up, mechitzas were put up for residential purposes, it's mutter. Why shouldn't this be mutter? More answer is no. Even if you planted it for the mechitzas and you planted it for use, it's still not considered hukaf ladira. Why? Because the use of it is really not to live under the tree. The people typically who stayed under the tree was to give shade for the watchmen, and the guards used to guard the area, watch the areas beyond the tree. So it's really for the purpose of the area outside the enclosure of the mechitzas. Any dira that the use is for the open space outside of it, you cannot be metalta more than Beis Hasayim. It's not considered hukaf ladira, and therefore you're limited to Beis Hasayim.